Welcome to the Minute of Strength. You probably just watched the trailer for Vintage Providence, which is our newest downloadable work-along video using not just kettlebells, but barbells and dumbbells. And I wanted to explain how we got to that point and why it's so important right now in our physical culture. When we shot that video in 2005, we didn't understand at that time why kettlebells existed in our culture today. I went back and figured out why, or we went back and figured out why they exist today the way they do, and how they existed 120 to 150 years ago, and how they were worked with. It was very, very interesting. A kettlebell back then was no different than a barbell and a dumbbell back then. It was just another tool. There was not a unique set of exercises that made up kettlebell training. No different than there were no unique exercises for barbell training versus dumbbell training. A jerk with a barbell was a jerk with a dumbbell. A Turkish get-up with a barbell was a Turkish get-up with a dumbbell. Where it became unique was the later 40s, 50s, 60s, right up 70s and 80s, 1900s. The kettlebell training as we know it today came to be. The competition style of kettlebell training, the professional level of kettlebell training, which is phenomenal as a sport. So what happened prior to that? We've seen great success with kettlebells. We've seen great success with people doing the DVD Providence. Life-changing testimonials we've received. Phenomenal results from just doing that workout 2 to 3 days a week. But what we found in the past couple of years, more and more people were wanted to get into kettlebell training. And the confusion is, true kettlebell training is taking it to that sport level, working on that strength endurance. Not everyone is ready or should start there. So we go back in time and we look at how is it done, how is a fundamental base created for strength, where strong men were some of the strongest human beings alive 120 to 150 years ago, 100 years ago. How did they do that? Well, they didn't do it with kettlebell training. They used kettlebell surely for swings and muscle outs and a few other very unique exercises, but there was no system for kettlebell training. They were just simply dumbbells and barbells, and also mace clubs. What we decided to do was incorporate the strength building base of what we call vintage progression, some of the exercises that have been lost in our physical culture, combining that with the efficiency that the kettlebell training, the unique style of kettlebell training offers, and combine the two in what we call vintage Providence. So we took the traditional kettlebell training rounds that were in Providence, and we took the half that round, and we gave you the vintage progression equivalent. So for instance, a swing with a dumbbell is quite different than a swing with a kettlebell, but you could see over 150 years how they've progressed into each other. So we teach you the swing with a dumbbell, which is quite different than a swing with a kettlebell, but we realize the learning curve is much less, and you build a fundamental base of strength necessary to shorten the learning curve of a kettlebell swing by swinging a dumbbell properly. So that's why it exists, and we go through every round in Providence that way. We found out things like windmills, for instance, were never done with kettlebells, only barbells. And it's interesting when you look back at some of the clients I've had over the years where at first they're complaining that their wrist hurts from the bell hanging on their wrist. They can't hold their wrist straight because of the tension the bell's creating, even if they're holding it properly. Well, their wrist was never conditioned to hold a bell perfectly straight. So this would happen. So we found a faster way to create this strength was not to put a bell in someone's hands right away, but start with an old style dumbbell. So again, vintage progression was born. The best tool for vintage progression, if you're doing this at home especially, or in a small studio, is our modular set. In one set, it offers you a barbell, a dumbbell, a pinch block, and you also have the ability to make a mace club out of the same bar. So these spheres just unscrew. So I can take this sphere off, I can load it up to 40 pounds in an 8-inch sphere. And I can screw on a 6-inch sphere on my mace club. I can take both ends off and I can put 2 8-inch spheres on and make a barbell. I can get my 5-inch handle and unscrew and screw on the same size sphere to create a dumbbell. My favorite is the pinch block. Just screws right onto my sphere. So with this, every exercise you do with a kettlebell, swings, cleans, presses, hand-to-hand sumo deadlift, Turkish get-up, everything. This is your kettlebell handle, if you can imagine. Instead of putting your hand through it, you're pinching it. So everything you do with a kettlebell, you do with a pinch block. Just substitute the tool for a different tool. Very, very unique benefits right here. If you're working in a sport that requires grip strength, true pinch strength, that's the tool for you. And you can incorporate in one week you do, or one day you're doing a kettlebell workout with the same movement patterns, the next day using a pinch block, and then you work with your vintage progressions in vintage Providence, using a barbell and a dumbbell. Amazing results, amazing. What we've also found is as we get very efficient with kettlebells, we no longer get the strength benefit that we got early on. So we need to offset that. So for a beginner, it helps build the base. For someone who's been into it for a while, like most of the people at Punch Gyms, I have clients here that have been working with me for 7 years who are extremely efficient. They're phenomenal. Their strength endurance is amazing. But then they plateaued in strength. So we offered vintage progression to them, and they increased their strength. And their resilience has gone up, and they feel better. They feel like they're stronger than they were. Those are the unique benefits of bringing vintage progression into the workouts. You'll be seeing a lot more of this. It's a phenomenal philosophy and principle. We've got to get back to some of these movement patterns. We've got young kids doing this. We have people now telling us, I'd rather use the thick grip barbells and dumbbells than kettlebells for certain exercises. And it's interesting, if you go back in time, they are the exact exercises that were always done with barbells and dumbbells and never kettlebells. Not that it's wrong, they just feel more comfortable with it. And it's not that it's easier either. A windmill with a barbell is far more difficult than a windmill with a kettlebell. It just feels different. It feels like more of a challenge. You're using stabilizing muscles that you don't use with a kettlebell. Again, there's a level of efficiency that kettlebell offers that you just can't have all the time if you're looking for strength. So here's the modular set. Check out Vintage Providence. The modular set's probably your best way to go, where you get your loadable spheres, interchangeable accessories to create many different tools to enhance your workouts. Give these things a shot and let me know how you like it.